Hello, stationery friends. Today I'll be talking about what I have currently inked up. I'll be showing you some of the stationery tools that I used in helping me to study for an exam that I recently passed for an accreditation that I really wanted. And I'll also be sharing some of the books that I have finished reading recently, as well as what I'm currently reading. And last but not least, I'll be talking a little bit about my 4 a.m. routine, which seems to be a bit of an area of interest, judging by the comments and the emails that I have received. Before we jump over to the desk and I show you what I've got currently inked up, I just want to throw a shout out to Steve of travelersnotebooktimes.com. Steve does an amazing job of curating fellow content creators on YouTube who are sharing how they use their Traveler's Notebook and their planner systems. And Steve puts out a weekly blog post with links to all these amazing content creators. And I just think it's fantastic that there's a platform for you and me, the audience, to go check out other stationery users and get different perspectives on how they're using their planner setups. If you're interested in checking it out, travelersnotebooktimes.com. Thank you, Steve. Ignore the date. I'm just using my old Hobonichi A6 here to showcase what I have currently inked up. I'm going to start with my TWSBI Eco Indigo. This is actually inked up currently with a Masters of Art homage to Gustav Klimt blue by Mont Blanc. This was a gift from a friend. It's a really lovely blue. The indigo I have, the TWSBI Indigo, is in a broad nib here. I like that on the Jovo number 5, although I am tempted to get a medium nib in this as well at some point. It's just a really rich blue. No shading characteristics or anything like that. Maybe a hint of red sheen in here, maybe. It's just a classic standard dark blue, which I really like. It's a little bit of a drier ink, I have noticed. So it has a little bit of hard starts every now and then. Once it gets going, it gets going. Next up here is the Edison Beaumont. Love this pen. I had a bit of a scary moment recently where I thought I lost this pen, but it turned out to be in a textbook. And I bet this is currently inked up with Iroshizuku. And this is in the Asagao color, which is like a purple blue. And it's a nice medium nib. Love this pen. It's an anniversary gift from my wife from a few years ago. And like I said, I was really worried that I had lost it recently, but found it, and it's never leaving my side again because it just has so much sentimental value for me. Here's my Lockme Quattro. And then this guy, this is my favorite Castel Ambition. So it's inked up with an Iroshizuku, and I always mispronounce the name or butcher it. This is the Murasaki Kubu. You see, I'm kind of gravitating towards fall colors already, even though it's summer. Don't know why, but I guess that's what I'm doing. And this is a broad nib. Next up is my Esterbrook Esty in Sea Glass. And this is inked up with a Private Reserve Spearmint, which I suppose is a little bit more of a summer green. So there you go, one summer color. Last but not least is my Binu. And this is inked up with an Iroshizuku Tsukushi. So yeah, it seems like I'm kind of gravitating towards more fallish colors. Between the blues and the purples and the browns here. Might change that up at some point, but for now, that's what I have. Oh, sorry, I'm obviously missing one more. And last but not least, I have my Pilot Custom 743 inked up with a Konpeki. That, my friends, is what I currently have inked. I recently passed an exam for an accreditation that I was looking to get, and I was convinced I was going to fail this exam owing to the fact of my limited amount of studying that I put into it. But I did study, and I think it was an interesting exercise to revisit how I used to study. The last time I had studied so intensely for a focused topic like this was probably close to 15 years ago in university when I was taking my last exams. And now that I'm talking a little bit about it out loud, I guess I do tend to study quite a lot, but using the word study maybe a little bit looser in terms of just areas of exploration. I like to broaden my horizon and take a look at different topics and areas of interest, but focusing on a specific academic exercise was an interesting journey to revisit. It reminded me of the stationery tools that I really like to use. One of them being my classic Leuchtturm A5. Now, when I was studying in university, almost 15 years ago, as I said, wow, it really has been that long. It's even longer. Now I'm showing my age, actually, regardless of how long ago that was. Effectively, I used to carry around a lot of A5 notebooks, and the Leuchtturms back then, because now I'm convinced it was a lot longer than 15 years ago, didn't exist, but there's good A5 notebooks, and I used to carry quite a bit of these size notebooks and fill in all my course notes in here. So here is what I used in terms of studying for this exam. My A5, I just picked up a Leuchtturm, just felt comfortable using a dot grid in here. This is a Quiver pen case. I'm not actually sure if this company exists anymore. They were in the States. If I find it, I'll put a link to their website in the description below. And I bought it when I was exclusively bullet journaling, which I did a lot in my Leuchtturm A5s, and I just wanted a 2-pen holder to slide onto my cover. But in this guy, in the Quiver, I would typically keep a fountain pen like this and a highlighter like so. And inside it's a dot grid notebook. This is where I took all my course notes and used this to write down ideas and notes as I was studying through my textbooks. TWSBI Ecos are largely what I used for fountain pens. In fact, I think that's all I used. And I had a blue, which this one is the indigo, and a TWSBI Eco white for black ink. And the inks I used in this guy is the Tsukiyo by Roshizuku in the Pilot line. And the black ink ranged from the Take-Sumi when I started a year ago to the TWSBI black, combination of using those both infrequently and switching over to the platinum carbon black when I finally picked that up this year as I finished up my studying. So blue, black inks. Now, when it comes to the highlighters, I picked up these guys. There are two different companies. These two are by Pentel, and this is by Zebra. What I really like about these highlighters is that they're double-ended. One end is kind of a standard line width. Well, I wouldn't say standard. A little bit less of a line width than a standard highlighter here. You can tell. But a really nice yellow I found with a decent amount of line width that I could highlight text. And the other end had a little bit more of a finer point. So I found this really good for drawing squares around certain text or underlining quite a bit. And I really like that in my textbook, the highlight here. So I have that in a yellow and a red, which I suppose looks like a pink here, and a blue. And I picked muted pastel colors as opposed to the standard kind of like bright over the top colors here, just because I didn't like the idea of bright colors sticking out of the page at me. A little bit more subtle is what I'm going for. So that's largely been my study toolkit. In fact, that has been my analog toolkit. I've really just enjoyed exploring, writing down notes again, and listening to the professor and jotting down notes. It just brought me right back to my university days and what I was doing with big pens and really cheap A5 spiral notebooks and things like that at the time. So it was just kind of really neat to go back down a bit of nostalgia in terms of studying like a university student for me specifically, and exploring the original basis that I always have had in analog tools. I did have a laptop that I carried around with me at the time. I didn't use it for course notes, surprisingly. It was more so just to access course material, and if I'm being absolutely honest, to play video games in between classes, games like Diablo 2. That might give you an idea of just how long ago my university days were. So it's been really cool to study again. I'm really glad it passed. I was a little bit nervous about the exam just because I was quite busy. I have been really quite busy I took the course almost a year ago, in fact, more than a year ago. And I told myself that I was going to, as soon as the course wrapped up, study, and write the exam right away. I didn't. Life got busy, work got busy, and then there was a period of general laziness, if I'm being absolutely honest, and health stuff earlier on the year. And coming into May, I realized that I was going to run out of time to actually take the exam without having to redo the entire course. The two are related. Long story short, booked in my exam for July and sort of studied a little bit here and there, and then quickly crammed probably a couple of weeks before the exam and took some practice tests and wrote a lot of notes and areas of this I don't know, must go explore. Studying is exhausting, and what I tend to do to supplement the periods of rest between studying, and if I'm being absolutely honest, there's more resting than studying, but regardless, what I supplement the periods of rest with studying is reading. I love reading in general, and I noticed an increase or an uptick in the amount I was reading just recently with studying up to the exam and finishing all. One of the books that I finished up was Red Rising. I picked this book up on Kindle and I blasted through this literally within a week. It was so much fun reading this book. I'm not going to spoil it, but to give you an idea of what it's about, it's definitely sci-fi. It's fascinating because it originates on, the entire story takes place on Mars. What I thought I was signing myself up for just turned into a fast-paced action adventure thriller. And I can't say much more than that other than there's elements of Hunger Games. Not that I've read those books, I did watch the movies, but very similar to the concept in there. I feel like if I say more, it's going to spoil it. I had a lot of fun reading this. So much so, this is a book series by Pierce Brown that I decided that I would pick up the second book, Colton Sun. So I'm blasting through that on Kindle right now. Red Rising, can't recommend it enough. The other book that I recently finished up was Holly by Stephen King. What an interesting book. It is not the usual Stephen King in the sense that, and I'm not going to spoil it, in the sense that it has elements of his traditional storytelling, but also a few elements that he's experimenting with in here in terms of the narrative and where it ends up. It's fascinating. Typical Stephen King, things are ratcheting up in tension as you read the story. Holly is a detective from the other couple of stories from Stephen King. So he's exploring Holly in particular here. She's a private detective, and I remember her from the other Stephen King book that I read many, many years ago called The Outsider. This detective is very good at what she does, and in this case, she's presented with a very interesting mystery and how she approaches it in terms of breaking it down and solving it is a fascinating perspective. And then the perspective of the perpetrators who she's chasing is interesting to explore. Disturbing is a great way of describing most Stephen King books, and this one definitely does it justice to a large extent. I liked it because it was a little bit different in terms of where the story naturally went, and if I say more, I'm probably going to spoil it. The other book that I finished up reading here is The Wager by David Grann. This is about the ship called the Wager, and it's a fascinating. This is around 1741, if I remember correctly, 1740. And the book is all about the ship, the man of war, combined with a fleet of man of wars with respect to the War of Jenkins' Ear. It's a funny story. Well, it's not funny if you were involved in the war, but funny many hundreds of years later when you're looking at how this incident started up between Britain and Spain, and supposedly a captain losing an ear, and this whole thing kicked off. Really, it was largely about economics and chasing gold and treasure more than anything else. The Wager set off from Britain and was supposed to loop around the bottom end of South America, chasing a Spanish galleon. And it's fascinating because of the characters that are involved. This is a nonfiction book, by the way, so with some liberties taken into describing the story as it unfolds by the author here. But yeah, it's really fascinating just in terms of the captain of the Wager, the captains who go through this journey, and the one who ends up, unfortunately, being shipwrecked with his crew on an island that is absolutely inaccessible. and the concept of the British at the time of their nobility, their approach within the naval ranking system being caught in a foreign land and how that all deteriorates amongst the captain and his crew. And a fascinating journey on those who do survive of getting back to Britain and the fallout of that. The conclusion was a little bit fast-paced for me. It did such a great job on the exposition for almost 2/3 of the book. The last third I found wrapped up really quickly, and that's only largely because of what was accessible in the journals of the individuals involved. Really cool book. I always love a good history book, so couldn't get enough of this. The other book that I recently finished up is Satellite Love by Genki Ferguson. An interesting story. It's largely a story about a young girl who has a communication with a satellite who's observing her, and it gets weird. Sort of in the style of Ruto Zeki, sort of in the style of Haruki Murakami, and something that's uniquely its own. I gotta say, it wasn't my personal favorite. I found myself struggling to finish it up 2/3 of the way through. It just didn't go where I thought it would, and it wrapped up in a very different way that left me feeling personally a little bit sad. So I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting a little bit more of a, I guess, Murakami book. And so that's nothing against the author. I think it's really well written, honestly, and I think it's done a fantastic job of writing a very interesting tale that didn't quite resonate with me saying interested a lot, aren't I? So on to what I'm reading right now. I mentioned that I had finished Red Rising and I was on the second book. This is Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. I'm already about a quarter of the way through and I literally picked it up 3 nights ago. I'm having a fun time reading this book series. The first book was about this journey of Darrow, the protagonist. I feel like I'm going to give away much more, and I don't want to give it away because I just think it's a great read, and you guys should check it out if you're interested in sci-fi and a thriller. This book is the continuation of Darrow's story, completely different genre set within sci-fi, and I just find fascinating how Pierce Brown has really done a unique job of mixing in different genre elements in the story of Darrow as he navigates his quest. I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm really enjoying that story. The other book that I'm reading right now, or just started, this is The Treeline by Ben Rawlence. The Last Forest and the Future of Life on Earth. I'm enjoying it because of the interesting perspective I picked up reading The Hidden Life of Trees, and I'm forgetting the author's name, but that was a really cool book in talking about how trees and forests are organic systems which are treated as organisms on their own in terms of their unique properties. And this book explores that and how the boreal forest is impacted. It's one of the oldest forests on Earth at that latitude. So this is the northern latitude here. It spans Norway, Siberia, Greenland, Canada, and it's really cool read. So I've been enjoying this one very much. The other nonfiction book that I'm exploring right now, and it's kind of funny because this has been on my radar for a long time, and I've just finally decided to pick it up. This is by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a cool book. A lot of the stuff I know just because of my job, I guess. But it's really nice to have some reminders and some practical advice that are good, succinct, pinpoint the areas of exploration when building relationships, continuing relationships, and what it means to navigate work. This is largely centered around work, but also your personal life and how that's how these tips can be really useful. It's interesting to me because this book came out in 1936. Dale Carnegie wrote it then, obviously. And it's so fascinating how, yes, the examples he uses are fairly dated to that era, but they are also so pertinent to life today and still, and what kind of stressors one goes through in terms of the workplace and navigating tough relationships, both internally and externally to the workplace, but also your personal life. And the advice that he gives, the author Dale, still stands today. And very admittedly, he even says this is his own attempt at writing himself a handbook to remind himself of the epithets that he's trying to hold himself up to. So I think it's really neat that I'm reading this book in 2024. This is updated for the next generation of leaders, is what it says. So this is an updated copy. And I think it's really, really cool that the advice still stands today, and the tips and the situations that one finds themselves hasn't changed all that much, if at all, in the last 90 years, give or take. The other one I'm reading right now is How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. Again, Dale Carnegie, the advice that he gives in kind of the 1930s, the advice he gives and the examples he uses are still pertinent today. It always surprises me. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but not much has changed when it comes to human anxiety. It's just the amount of things that you can be anxious about, but that very core feeling of anxiety and what that does to one's psyche and emotional well-being, I think is always an interesting area of exploration. I, like everybody else, have periods of anxiety, and some days it seems like it can be daunting in terms of what you're signing yourself up for, or what you're getting yourself into. And so I think the reminder of just some practical tips and advice has been really useful for me. It's just good to always remind myself to get myself out of a funk, and these are the things that I can control and what I can do, and these are the things that I can't control, and that's okay, and making a little bit of acceptance in there. So I'm on chapter 3 of this guy. It's a quick read. I'm really, really enjoying it as well. A couple of other books that I'm really enjoying: The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Hopefully I did. This is such a cool book. In fact, I have it on my Kindle, and I ended up getting the hard copy. This particular copy here has the illustrations from Khalil. I think it's such a beautiful work of prose and poetry mixed together. Well, you can't call it poetry because it's quite long, but prose and the metaphor of what he's exploring there, both in terms of spirituality as well as what it means to be alive, and how one is contributing to the world, how one resides within the world. It's timeless advice. It's not overt advice. It's very subtle, and it's just a presentation in a very romantic way of what it means to be decent and good, and how that can affect one's ability to approach their lives with a sense of ease and grace. So been really enjoying blasting through this book over and over again. Every single time I read it, every single time I reread it, I always pick up another nugget in there, and I find this book very inspiring. I'm blasting through Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I know this book has been very popular. I think it's quite popular on most book circles, and it came out almost a year ago. Bought it from the library, and I was genuinely surprised of how much I'm enjoying it. When it comes to fiction, I tend to gravitate towards sci-fi with the occasional exploration of thrillers and horror. This is not that book. This is a really cool fiction book, and it involves video games, which I enjoy from time to time. And I think it's unique in what it's doing with their characters here. It centers around kind of two prickly protagonists, prickly in the sense that they're highly intellectual, and they have an interesting past in terms of their friendship that drifts apart, and they reconnect in their college years and decide to make a video game together. And it's a fascinating journey because they have their own individual stories of what's going on for them, but they also have such a beautiful, what I can only describe as friendship. I'm only on chapter, what am I on? Chapter, about a quarter of the way through the book, almost a third actually. So I don't know where it's going yet, but so far it's been about a beautiful friendship with just a great amount of love between these two protagonists and the surrounding characters in there. I'm really enjoying blasting through this. Another book that I'm really enjoying is by Ryan Holiday. This is The Obstacle is the Way, the timeless art of turning trials into triumph. And it's centered around Stoicism and Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor's approach on facing obstacles, and he had quite many in his lifetime, and the timeless advice that is still presented today. You know, I've talked about Dale Carnegie, I've talked about, and I'm sharing this one right now in terms of Ryan Holiday and his referencing of Marcus Aurelius. Timeless advice. A lot changes and a lot doesn't change, and I just really enjoy exploring that perspective over a course of many lifetimes about the advice that one still to this day can employ to tackle things like worry, anxiety, fears, challenging situations, and how to pivot them into areas of growth, of exploration, of trying to embrace the very reality that life is full of difficulties for everybody involved. And so there's a common connection, obviously, between us as human beings, but also a common connection on the things that we all face. What might seem daunting to one individual, maybe less so for another individual, but still daunting at the end of the day. So I've been really enjoying reading these books by Dale Carnegie, this exploration by Ryan Holiday on The Obstacle is the Way. And the other book that I consistently read from Ryan Holiday is Daily Dad, which is, again, just really good, useful daily advice on how to approach parenting, and specifically from, I guess, a male perspective, what it means to be a dad. And I like it because it doesn't come at it from the approach of typical toxic masculinity, I suppose, but more so from the approach of how are you empowering your children, and how are you providing a life for them that can be enriching and allows them to be the people that they are, and growing really good kids, or helping them to grow into really good individuals. So really enjoying The Obstacle is the Way. That is currently my reading list in terms of, well, not even reading right now. I have quite a few books on the go. The next set of books that I'm going to probably tackle here, I think, once I get through these ones, is maybe another exploration in Stephen King, and definitely a continuation in the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. And I think I'll be exploring the Roman Empire for a little bit. Or the Persian Empire, sorry. There's a couple of really good books that have cropped up on my radar. Agrippina, this fantastic area of exploration in terms of this amazing character in history. And I'd love to go check that out as well. My 4 a.m. routine, as I mentioned, seems to be an area of interest, and I should preface this by saying a couple things. Number one, I'm just a guy who's doing this. I'm not sure if I've got any sage advice to offer, but I'd be happy to share what has been working for me and why I did this, which seems to be a lot of the questions of why do you wake up at 4 a.m. and how does this help you? So happy to talk about that. And I think the other thing I should probably preface this video with is my consistency of my 4 a.m. routine has been really impacted this year just because of the health stuff that I went through at the start of the year. So I'm rebounding from that. I will probably wake up around 4 a.m. or certain days like today where I wake up at 3 a.m. Out of the 7 days a week, maybe 4 to 5 days right now. I'm trying to work back up to the 7 a.m. 7 days a week, only because of just allowing my body the rest and recovery that it needs. And so sometimes I will sleep in, and that is okay. It's just more really about listening to your body. The other thing about a 4 a.m. routine or an early morning routine is it doesn't really actually have to do with your morning. It's more about your evening and setting yourself up for success to wake up early. So the days I tend to sleep in means what it typically means is that my evening routine has gone a little bit longer than I had anticipated. Now, for me personally, that's a lot to do with kids. If they're staying up a little bit later, I'm staying up a little bit later, and that's okay. I used to be able to, before the health stuff, I used to be able to stay up late and wake up early naturally. as I mentioned, recovering from that. So just a couple of caveats around all of this. I'm a guy who loves to wake up early, and right now I'm not doing as consistently as I'd like, but when I do, I absolutely enjoy it. And like I said, when I'm doing it 5 days out of the 7 days a week, it's still incredibly helpful, and I'm getting closer and closer to doing this 7 days a week again now, hopefully come the fall. So what does it entail to wake up at 4 a.m. and why do I do this? Well, I suppose the whole idea of waking up early, and let me know in the comment section below, let me know in the comment section below if you want me to do a dedicated video on the 4 a.m. routine. I'm just going to blast through this as quickly as possible, but I'd be happy to do a little bit more of a deeper dive in terms of my routine and each of the things that are really important to me. So waking up early has a lot to do with your evening routine, and it really is about getting to bed earlier. So this concept of waking up early has to be balanced with getting the right amount of sleep for you and your body. The standard advice you get out there is you need 7 to 8 hours of sleep, depending on which study and which article you're looking at. It could either be 8 to 9 hours or almost 10 hours, depending on which article you're looking at. And it also depends on your age. So there's a lot to unpack in that in itself. For me personally, pre-health issues, no problems working off of 5 to 6 hours of sleep. Post-health issues, I tend to go between 6 to 8 hours, depending on what my body is telling me to do. So generally, my evening routine, I tend to get to bed around 9 to 10, and I wake up on 4 a.m. Some days, as I mentioned, that 10 p.m. goes to 10:30, 11, 12, and so definitely I'll be sleeping in a little bit, waking up around 5:30 or 6:30 even, depending on how late my evenings go. So those are some of the caveats. Now, why would you wake up early? Why did I wake up early? It's much like a pilot. There's a couple of reasons here. So it's much like a pilot. She or he is going through a checklist of all the things that they need to do to make sure that the flight and that the plane takes off correctly, and that the flight is going to be a safe ride and a pleasant experience for everybody involved. Given that there's storms ahead, known storms ahead, there's unanticipated storms ahead, and there's a distance to cover each day. So that's the methodology or the metaphor that I took into my mind when I started doing this. Was just allowing myself to set myself up for success. How do I approach my day so that I've got the best version of me jumping into my day, or easing into my day, perhaps, is a better way to say that. So that's reason number one. Reason number two, I just wanted some time in the day that was just for me. And this became more important after I had kids. I think a lot of folks out there who are married and have kids can probably relate. But for me, it was really important to carve out some time that allowed me to just have some me time and pick a few things that I really wanted to do that were not impacted by other people's schedules. So I felt like naturally for me, that was the morning and getting a head start on the day in terms of that pilot metaphor. Everybody else is asleep. It just made me feel like I was getting ahead in my day. And as funny as this may sound, while other people are waking up and starting their days, I already had effectively 2 or 3 hours by myself and had been calibrated in a way to be ahead, if that makes sense. So those are a couple of areas of why I started doing this. The other thing I should probably mention is that I was not naturally a morning person before I started doing this. It was very much me waking up at 6:30, 7:30, 8:30 even, jumping out of bed, having a quick bite, and running to work as quickly as possible, hoping not to be 10, 15 minutes late. A lot of that changed because of the reasons I mentioned of wanting to get a head start on my day, having some me time. But it really changed for me when I found myself at a Buddhist monastery, and this is a whole different story we can explore later. But I had some area of exploration with meditation, and then I found myself at this Buddhist monastery with a very set schedule of waking up early every day at 4:30, and you would meditate for an hour at 5 o'clock. And the first couple of days, don't get me wrong, this was quite a system shock, but I was very pleasantly surprised in day 3 when this just naturally clicked. I felt like I wanted to get up. I felt like I wanted to meditate for an hour. Once the trauma of that long period of meditation settled, it was just really fun, and I just carried that with me into the rest of my life. So I started doing that. This is all before I got married and had kids. I started waking up naturally early, reading and meditating, and it's just so much fun to do this. And felt like I was giving myself an opportunity to learn things early in the morning that I felt that I might be too drained to do in the evening. And at that point in my life, saving a lot of my evenings for a lot of socializing and hanging out with friends and going to parties, that kind of stuff. So as I got older, had kids, it became really important to me to carve out that time, not only for meditation, because that's something I really enjoy and it allows me to do that reset there, to read and journal and have some quiet stationery time that is unimpeded. So that's what I do. I wake up at 4 a.m. I quickly run through my morning ablutions and get downstairs, do a little bit of walking back and forth just to wake the body up, or I might do some qigong to move the body, just to get my body grounded. And what I do after that is have a really quick workout sometimes if I'm feeling like I'm just kind of feeling a little bit dissociated from my body. So I'll have a 10-minute workout with some kettlebells or just doing some calisthenics and that type of thing. And then one of my favorite things to do is meditate. So I can meditate anywhere between 20 minutes to 40 minutes, depending on what I'm trying to do that morning or how much time I've got. But comfortable for me, if I wake up at 4 specifically, I'll probably be meditating for 40 minutes. And of course, all of this is predicated on the fact that I'm not recording on that day. My recording days look a little bit different. So I'll meditate for 40 minutes after a 10-minute workout. It's probably around 5:15 or so, and I will sit, journal, and read until about 6 o'clock, 6:15, so about an hour. It's just stationary analog time. And around 6:15, I will be making myself a quick breakfast, and I'm usually out the door by 7:30 or 8. Now, usually it's around 8 o'clock this year in particular, just because of the health stuff that I've been mentioning. But more importantly, just so I have some good quality time for my kids who wake up around 7 o'clock. So that's, in a nutshell, my morning routine. Certain parts or categories move around. One of the things my wife and I have been really enjoying doing together is working out together. So what I will tend to do is save the workout for 6 o'clock when she's up, or 6:30 even when she wakes up. She is not a morning person, definitely. And so I'll just spend more time doing things that I want to do, meditating longer, reading longer, journaling a lot more, catching up on my 5-year diary. That's what I'm doing that morning. But it's a lot of analog focused time. And that's what I really enjoy. I think that's the key to answer one commenter's question about how do you wake up at 4 a.m. I think it's a lot to do with what you're looking forward to doing with this time. Just to wake up at 4 a.m. I don't think is, or early morning, I should say, just to wake up early isn't really useful if there isn't a game plan in terms of why you want to do it. And it's really important about the why. So for me, it's having a really good meditation, having a really nice, quiet time. And, you know, if I'm worrying about something, to give myself the space to spend some time journaling, letting the meditation do its job of taking some of that anxiety away, and coming up with a game plan for the day. Okay, what do I need to do in order to go from A in the morning to B in the evening? And I'll ask myself questions in my long-form journaling of, how do I want to feel at the end of the day? If I'm feeling particularly anxious, I will ask myself, how do I want to feel at the end of the day? Peaceful, calm, and relaxed. okay, and then, much like the books that I was sharing earlier, what do I need to do to get there, right? So I'll think about all the things that could go wrong, go through an exercise of writing down, okay, accepting that these are all the things that could go wrong. What can I do to improve the situation? And I'll focus on that. So I find if I don't have those mornings, and I'll be completely honest, when I do sleep in, as I mentioned, I've been doing a little bit lately, I feel so much more discombobulated throughout my day because I haven't had that time. I feel like I'm thrust into the throes of whatever life is throwing at me. And yes, completely accepting the fact that life is completely unpredictable, there is still a sense of approach, a sense of, seizing the day when I wake up early. When I don't wake up early, I feel like I'm just jumping from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and I feel absolutely drained by the time the evening rolls around. So that's really quickly what I do. I'm happy to explore this in a more detailed video. If you guys are actually interested in that, let me know in the comment section that you would like a specific video on the 4 a.m. routine, and I'd be happy to do that and explore that for you. Just to cap it off, if you are interested in waking up earlier than you do, it doesn't have to be 4 a.m. I would say have something that you are looking forward to doing, whatever that is for you, that you can that you can get the most value out of in the early morning there. And then a lot of the morning routine is actually really dependent on your evening routine. So it's going to be a struggle waking up earlier if you are watching TV until 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, that kind of thing. Trust me, I've been there. It's harder just because of how your brain operates with respect to that stimulus. So waking up even with an alarm clock is going to be a little bit more difficult. So a lot of it really has to do with your evening routine and how you're winding down from your day. For me, that's a little bit journaling in the evenings. That's a lot of analog activities, an hour at least before I go to bed. And it's getting to bed a little bit earlier than perhaps the rest of the world does. So, and maybe not. I came across a funny meme. No, it wasn't a meme. I think maybe it was even an Instagram reel recently or something where someone was reflecting on how when they were a young kid, they were complaining to their parents about why they couldn't stay up later. And the mom was saying, well, your ideal bedtime is 9 p.m. And the kid, this person, the kids rebelling against that idea and wishing that they could be grown up so that they could find their right bedtime and stay up later. And now that they're grown up, turns out that their ideal bedtime is 9:30. So take it for what you will. I think it's an area of exploration. Much like I'm a big fan of anything like this, it's experimenting and seeing what works for you and trial and error, without denying that when you're trying to create a new habit like this for yourself, there is a sense of a little bit of trauma, right? You're forcing yourself to change your routine. So that alarm clock is going to weigh heavily the first few days you do this, but if you keep at it and add some consistency behind it, have a very clear vision of why you're doing this, it goes pretty smoothly and you'll find yourself in an early morning routine with ease very naturally. I'm a big advocate of it. It works very well for me. It doesn't work very well for certain people, and that's fine. Like I said, my wife is definitely not a morning person for various reasons. So it's just what works for you and whether this is something that's going to be a benefit to your emotional well-being and how you are approaching your day. I hope that helps. I've got a question for you. One of my most popular videos, this guy here, which is my 5 favorite inserts for the Traveler's Notebook, has a lot of views and gets a lot of traffic. And a consistent complaint I get about it is the fact that the audio editing on it is not good. And the truth is, it is not good. It was one of my earlier videos when I started up this YouTube channel and was still trying to figure out how to mix the audio backing that I wanted in terms of music with my voice. At the time, I had this idea that I wanted a really solid music background with my voice, I didn't quite have the tools or the know-how on how to mix those two together. It's got good content. I would agree with most of my viewers who typically comment on that video that it's really hard to hear what I'm trying to say over the background noise. And I didn't know how to fix it at the time, but I finally do. So I guess the question I have for you is, do you want me to repost this video with the edited version of it? Let me know in the comment section below. Well, folks, thanks very much for joining me today. As always, thank you for the comments. I apologize that I haven't responded as frequently as I typically have in the past. It's been summertime, lots of things going on. And as I mentioned, I'm just taking a little bit of a break as much as I can from the digital space and really enjoying the summer weather out there and trying to be outdoors as much as possible with my analog kit. I will be doing an upcoming video on the Lockbee products that I've been experimenting with for the last month and a bit, and it's been really fun playing around with these amazing products there that I've talked about in previous videos. And I'll be getting ready for fall, just like everybody else, obviously, and redoing some of my fountain pen inking up there, as well as exploring my next pen purchase, which is probably going to be a Pilot Custom 823. And seeing what that looks like. Thanks very much for joining me. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and bye for now.